You still there, bro? What in the hell is going on?
Just so you prior. Everybody riot, organized chaos, nobody. Listening to my song, hype joint. This that no nigga with the bass and the bang, make it do yo. Hit you with the five elements, like five elements.
All right, so I apologize.
Yeah, I was saying we must have a bad connection.
All right, so I apologize for that. Just something must be going on with the controls and everything, so we're just going to get right into the show. Never a dull moment here at Hamilton Radio, I swear to God. But anyways, I'd like to welcome everybody. Roundtable here at HamiltonRadio.net, channel HR2. We got a very special guest today. This is Don McGuire, photographer for the UFC. How you been, man? How's everything?
Oh, I'm doing good, brother, man. I'm just coming off a tremendous fight week, a little wore out, getting set for my my next few weeks of getting back to the sport.
I bet, man. It sounds awesome. What? You make it sound like you took a little bit of time off. Did anything happen?
Oh, no. See, in between shooting, see, that's what a lot of people don't understand about me. In between shooting my events, of course we have to edit it. The promotion doesn't buy everything, but I also run a syndicated radio show myself, both in sport and in music. So I kind of got my hands a little bit in every aspect and every genre.
Okay. You were actually telling me yesterday you were doing an interview with a guy transitioning from football to MMA. You said he was a San Diego Charger. Who was he?
Gosh, now you're going to make me look up his name.
It's all good.
Has a nice ring, bada boom, bada bing. You love it when I go off.
All right, so what was his name? We'll just keep going with the conversation.
The phones are loving us tonight, bro. The phones are loving us. But
we're working with it. We're working with it.
The thing about it is you asked me a question about who I had coming on my show. I'm trying to get to that right now because I really don't know his name, to be quite honest with you. He was just thrown in my lap by Charlene Merriman.
Okay.
And the management, but I'll get to that right now, man, because I think the listeners need to know. One thing is it's tremendous for all of us to be able to do different aspects and show different retrospects, but that's one thing I like to do on my show. I like to share all aspects, not just the sports, but we got Christian McCain from the San Diego Chargers, now the LA Chargers, coming on tonight.
Oh, he's the one coming on tonight, so this is after?
Yes, sir. He was supposed to come on before, but the time was going to overlap, and I didn't want to miss your show, brother.
All right. Well, I appreciate you making time for me, man. It means a lot. Especially after last week where we had to, fix that time difference and everything. Because you're all the way out. What are you, out in Minnesota?
Missouri. I'm actually out in Missouri, which it's a tremendous hub. I'm originally from the West Coast. But when you're in the fight world, a lot of people don't realize that 99% of the game is travel. And so when we moved out to Missouri, it was great because the grandparents were here, but it's also a tremendous hub to get to every aspect of the United States and different aspects of the world. You're in the Midwest, it's centrally located, so it truly is a hub, and it makes it a lot easier on us and gives us a little bit more transition time coming off the travel. When I first got in the industry, we were doing 38 to 42 weeks a year. Okay. And now I'm averaging about 25 to 30 weeks a year, and I'm getting ready to have my 54th birthday. So.
Okay. So are you like trying to like dial it back a little bit? Because I know you've been in this for a long time. I think you told me around 25 years. So, and you were
Yeah.
talking about retirement the first time we talked on the phone. So are you just trying to like ease back into that a little bit?
Well, I had about 7 years. Just 7 years ago, I had to take some time off. I had to spend about a year in the hospital.
Okay.
Uh, as you know, I'm an amputee, so I
Yeah.
kind of was taking a step away from the sport. I wasn't sure that I was going to be able to come back to the sport. And HBO and Zach Cummings, a UFC veteran, had asked me to come back and shoot a fight. And I came out of retirement and I shot that fight.
Okay.
And my passion and strength for the sport grew. And some of my best work came after losing my leg. And I was inducted into the Hall of Fame twice as a photographer. This July, I'll be inducted into the Bare Knuckle Hall of Fame as a journalist. So the second half of my career coming back has truly been the better part and the more of the blessed.
You know what you're actually making me think of? You remember a wrestler called Shawn Michaels, right?
Yes, sir.
All right. That reminds me of when he broke his back and then came back 4 years later. Because I remember that was when I got into wrestling, around like 2006, a few years after he came back. And that was one of the main guys I was watching. He was one of the guys that really made me a fan. And that almost reminds me of that in a way a little bit. It was just something
Yeah.
similar that I, thought of. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's funny that you bring up the aspect of wrestling. This last April, I was up in Oregon for the return of former IBF world champion in boxing, Steve 2 Pound Forbes, and my buddy from CBS, Bobby Pilata, was there. My buddy Jamie Huey, who is the tough striking coach for the UFC, was also there, and I brought my mutual host from my boxing show with me, and everybody's into wrestling. And I felt like the outcast, because everybody knew about wrestling. Everybody is defined and into it, even the former IBF world champion. And even though I've interviewed people like Dan Severn, Bobby Lashley, CM Punk, and others, I never have really dwelled too much into the new era aspect of it. I had a show the other day, and Fernando Marrero, I guess his stage name would be PNB. He's like on a B-level circuit wrestling, trying to get into the big times in wrestling, and I'm learning more and more about it. I'm learning to appreciate it and love it, man. It's a sport that I think I need to get my cameras into.
You see, man, I just think you like people actually getting knocked out.
Yeah.
I think it was a little bit harder for you to get into like the scripted stuff, even though some of the bumps and the punishment they take is like, oh my god, did that really just happen? You actually like to see people authentically get knocked out.
Oh, I love it. And the thing of it is you watch them karate movies back in the early days, and you hear them cheesy sound effects. Well, I'll be the first to tell you, when you're, on the stool, right next to the cage, you do hear the wisp of a kick and a fist. There is actual noise. It's like the swinging of a bat. You're gonna hear it. But I got a funny story for you. I hope you don't mind me telling it real quick. I was getting ready to do a boxing / MMA event for Fight Night Returns, and we had a show the day before with the Half Pint Brawlers. And I was with the gentleman that picked these people up at the airport. Now, mind you, here comes 8 or 9 guys. They're in walkers, crutches, wheelchairs, and this and that. And I'm like, how in the world are these guys going to wrestle if they can't even walk? and I got to tell you, come time for them to put on the show, these guys that couldn't walk when we picked them up at the airport come flying out of the curtain. And I tell you, that gives to the old expression, the show must go on. Yeah. I don't know how they do it, but that's one thing I can say to the fans, the people that love wrestling, is I bought the props for the show.
Yeah.
And I brought the garbage cans, I brought the pool cues, I bought the
Nice.
staples, the staple guns. All of that is real.
Yeah.
All of it's real.
Yeah. All of that stuff is real. Every time, especially back in the old days when you got hit with like a weapon, you took a chair shot to the back. Now, all that stuff is real. They're actually hitting each other with chairs. People don't realize that, and they think, there's some way to like hit somebody with a chair to the back. There's no way to hit somebody. There's no way to smack somebody in the back with a chair and, not make that hurt. You're smacking somebody with a chair. You're smacking somebody with the chair. That's how gravity works. They think there's
Oh
like some
yeah.
science to it. There's nothing to it. You're really hitting somebody.
Oh yeah. The athleticism is there. If people think that wrestlers truly aren't true competitors or true men of the sport, you're absolutely wrong. It's just I've never been able to grasp that aspect. You got to
Yeah.
remember, I'm an old man, so I'm from the days of Pat Patterson, Andre
Yeah.
the Giant, Haystack Calhoun. So the WWE, WWF, and all that, and TNA. That's all new to me.
Yeah. Haystacks Calhoun. That's far back. I was gonna say my dad used to always talk about guys. He always used to talk about guys like that too. Though he would always talk about like Bruno Sammartino, Ivan Koloff, Pedro Morales. That's who my dad talks about. And I remember that's actually who my dad was growing up with because I remember I think Bruno Sammartino became champion. I want to say it was like 63, 64, and that was back when my dad was a teenager. So he was growing up with those guys. But you were mentioning guys like that too. I just got on my dad and him mentioning a few. Sorry.
Yeah. Oh no, overall, if there was anything that I would like for anybody to understand about the UFC, Bellator, any aspect of combat sports, is it's pretty close in some aspects to wrestling. Everybody thinks that it's some brutal sport, that it's the raw nature, that what they see on television, what they see on the internet is what's perplexed behind the scenes. And that is one of the biggest misconceptions of the sport. There are some fighters that genuinely dislike each other.
Yeah.
But, it is entertainment. You do have to build a show. You have to get the fans engaged. But what goes behind the scenes is a true brotherhood / sisterhood that can't be replaced. I mean, the same goes with boxing and so forth. The attitudes and the whole theatrical aspect goes out the window when you're behind the scenes.
Yeah. And I think there's just a respect that, competitors have for each other, whether they dislike each other or not, for getting in the ring. I think, at least most of the time, there's people that will have that certain respect level.
Oh yeah, most definitely. People in this sport nowadays, they don't realize when I first originally got into it, I got into boxing,
Yeah.
and then I transitioned to Pride, Glory, and then to the UFC. And back in those days, we would travel or take an event. We would pay for our own travel, pay for our own hotel and food and whatever. And sometimes we even had to pay to get into the event, not knowing if we were even going to get paid or reimbursed at the end of the night. And, probably 7 out of 10 times you did, but you do it because you love the sport, and now most of us 1%ers that are still left in the sport, the reason we do it is because, you don't decide when to leave the sport decides when to leave you.
Yeah. And I want to talk about your point. What the hell was I just about to say? This has been happening like the third straight weeks. Like I'll have a point and then I'll just like lose it. You know what I mean? That ever happened to you?
Oh, trust me, I know. Like I said, I have my own syndicated show, and I don't write anything down. It's unscripted, and I'll be right in the middle of a thought, and it just disappears, and you're standing there holding the bag, and it's kind of hard to pick things back up where you were.
Yeah, it just happened right now. I'm sure I'm gonna remember it though. I do wanna make sure we talk about like some of like the concerts you shoot. You know, some of the guys you were telling me about. You had a picture of a group of people. I forget their name. I have to look that up. Like you with like the guy going to MMA. But yeah, you were telling me about all the concerts you shoot and about this one group specifically. So you want to talk to me about that?
Oh, about my family, the Saint Lunatics.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Lunatics. I
you
just pulled
know,
it up.
yeah, I had the opportunity a few years back to meet one of the writers and producers for the Lunatics, and I got the opportunity to go up to Florissant, Missouri, and do a live show with the Lunatics and several other artists up at one of the producers' houses. And it just so happened that we ended up doing it at Chingy's house.
Okay.
And there's a lake in the backyard, and I pull up to this house, and it's probably one of the most beautiful houses you'll ever see.
Yeah.
And I'm looking out in the from the driveway out into the cul-de-sac where it's set, and there's probably $3 or $4 million worth of cars. And so
Wow.
I asked the most ironic question in the world to one of the producers. I said, "Do the police ever get called on y'all?" And they started laughing at me. And he asked me why. I said, "Well, because a bunch of brothers pulling up in $200,000-$300,000 cars, in this neighborhood, you would think that they would think that the mob was having a meeting or something."
Yeah.
And from that point on, we were like family. Now I go up there, we go to Nellie's house. We have barbecues.
Nice.
We sit in the studio. 20 to 23 artists will come over. Different producers will come over, and we all sit down and we break bread, and then we go down to the studio and we create music. And some of the producers that are there actually pull some of the artists because they've never heard them before. You get like Sham from the original Track Stars. You get Shaka Zulu. You get a lot of different aspects of music that come up there and hang out with us when we do these types of events.
Okay.
Another aspect in the music industry that I hold very near and dear to my heart, and that's Bone Thugs and Harmony.
Okay.
We've shot. I've shot a major part of their tour, and they become family. Actually, I think it was last May. It was April 27th. We did a show with them here in Springfield, Missouri, and it happened to be my wife's birthday. And I tell you what, you couldn't find a more tremendous bunch of iconic legends in the industry. They are truly brothers. Sloan Bone to Crazy Bone to Lazy Bone, all of them are truly a tremendous aspect. For me, somebody like me who is not one that gets starstruck or a person that looks at anybody any different, I got to tell you, when you're sitting with somebody that Eazy-E created, and they've lasted in the industry for almost 30 years, I believe it's 28 years, and you become family with them and you break bread with them, it kind of adds some relevance to your life. You do get a little starstruck.
Yeah, you look at it one day and it's just like, wow. Like I actually know this guy. I'm breaking bread with this guy, and the people that I've gotten to meet. It has that effect. It'll leave you like that.
Oh yeah, like I said, I know Michael Katz quite well, man. Shout out to Michael Katz, Anakion Records.
Shout out to Nakey Music.
I love the guy, Yeah, done a lot with him. I mean, I brought a lot of his artists on my show, and I think what he does for the artist stuff in upstate is tremendous. Like I was talking to you earlier, I watched one of your shows. You had Metanoise on there. You were playing their music, and I think a lot of people wouldn't get to hear those aspects of music if it wasn't for shows like yours.
Yeah, I try to bring all kinds of different people on. I've had musicians on. I've had a bunch of different comedians on, especially after starting to do stand-up comedy a little over a year ago and, meeting all the different comedians I've met through here. I've had athletes on. I remember Don Beebe came on to my show, former NFL player, I think he's the head coach at the University of Illinois right now, so big shout out to him. I can't wait to talk to him in December about his season, about the NFL season, about all that stuff going on. Had former Browns player John Hughes on here. And, I've had all kinds of different guys on, and I do like the fact that I get to, have a platform for guys with, so many different talents, so many different backgrounds. I will say I've never had any UFC or boxing guys on here, though. You're the first UFC guy I've had. So now next we need to get an MMA fighter. That would be pretty cool. That would be a different kind of experience.
Yeah, see, I like that, because it shows you think outside the box. You look back at the sport when it first began, and see, people don't realize that the UFC, when it was first correlated, each fighter would have to fight 3 times a night. You didn't get to pick who you were fighting. You didn't even know who you were fighting. You showed up, you drew a number, you took a seat. And then they would call the numbers, and whoever it coincided, you could be a 185-pound guy, end up fighting somebody that's 300 pounds. Okay. And the thing of it is, you would fight 3 times a night for $1,000. And, a lot of people signed up for it. You look at, the creators and the certain aspects that define the UFC, and you gotta praise them. They were men ahead of their time. Do I look at the sport as as it evolved and think it was more brutal then than now? No, the sport has just transitioned. People still don't understand this when we say this. You may not even understand it, but the sport is in its infancy. The sport is still in its infancy, and people could say, well, it's been around since 1996, or a little bit before. But the thing of it is, it hasn't grown into its full potential.
I'm older
We'll
than
see
you,
that
so.
happening in the next 2 to 3 years here.
Yeah, no, I can only imagine what UFC is going to grow into. And you're right, it is still in its infancy, 1996, you think of all the things that have been around, since like the 1920s, some of them even later, baseball since the 1800s. You look at all those different sports and, how they've grown and the history of them. You're right, UFC is still in its infancy, and it's still going to grow to its full potential. I think, the best thing about that, though, is that it came around in a time where everything was advancing so fast. I think the UFC is probably going to reach heights maybe like no other sport has reached because of the time they were, brought in. You know what I mean?
Oh, most definitely. And, it's funny. One time, and I'll share this with you. It's only the second time I've ever shared it. Somebody had asked me, I think it was CBS, did an interview with me, and they asked me, what was my most memorable moment of all my time in the sport? And I honestly got to say it's my time with Kimbo Slice. And a lot of people would shake their head or not agree with me in that aspect, but because they look at him as a street fighter, they look at somebody that came from South Florida, somebody that, fought in backyards, but that really wasn't Kimbo Slice. The first time I met him, it's ironic. I was with an executive, and we were at the airport, and Team Kimbo was coming off and up the ramp, and my boss told me to take pictures, so, you take pictures.
Yeah.
The next thing I know, I'm getting my camera shoved in my face, and I'm flying about 3 feet backwards. And my boss just starts getting irate, going, "What the hell is going on here?" And Kimbo's all, "Whoa, what's going on?" And Wes Slade from the promotion goes, that's my photographer. So Kimbo reaches down, he picks me up, he dusts me off, and he gives me a kiss on my forehead. And he says, "You ride with me, little man." And he said, "You take all the pictures you want." And from that point on, I shot the last 8 fights of Kimbo Slice's career. But what even made it more, you know, heartfelt and gave more relevance to it, I was getting ready to interview his son, because his son had stepped up into Bellator, Kevin Ferguson Jr., Baby Slice.
Yeah.
He was getting ready to fight, and I was the night that I was set to interview him was the night that Kimbo Slice had died.
Oh, man. I gotta say, though, rest in peace, Kimbo Slice, first of all. But Kimbo Slice, to me, I always looked at him as, you know, somebody who started off as a street fighter, but he had so much talent that, you know, people started looking at the YouTube videos. He started taking notice of people in the fight game. And, you know, basically, they just wanted to see what he had, you know, when he was able to transition into it. And Kimbo Slice showed that, you know, even just a simple guy from the streets, you know, fighting people out in parking lots, out in backyards, you know, can hang with, you know, people that have done this for a living. So it just showed me that, you know, you could succeed at anything you tried to do. I do like the personal touch that you kind of put on it, but, you know, when I think of Kimbo Slice, that's mainly what I would think of.
Yeah, you know, I'll also let you know, you can't, in life, you can't judge a book by its cover, because, you know, my times and moments with Kimbo Slice, you know, he was a quiet man. He was a man that was always in deep thought. His son, Baby Slice Jr., is the same exact way. You know, I'm blessed to have him in my life and to be able to be a brother to him and to interview him. But, you know, one thing that I admired about Kimbo Slice, we went to a Krispy Kreme, and he had bought 12 dozen donuts.
Wow.
And by the time he got done getting his order, he had already ate a dozen donuts, and he brought out a black Sharpie, and he signed every one of the boxes. And I'm sitting there wondering, you know, what is he doing? You know, why is he signing every one? But then Kimbo Slice walked around the restaurant, and he handed a box of signed donuts to people that were already in the establishment. And it really gave me a true insight to who the man Kimbo Slice really was. And I think the world needs to know that he was probably one of the most kind, giving, but yet, I would say, introverted people in the sport.
Yeah, it sounds like it from the way you say it, honestly. You know what I noticed? You know, this is, like, not looking at, you know, any of, like, you know, his personal qualities. And honestly, you know, he sounds like a really good guy to be around. Unfortunately, I'll never get the chance to know Kimbo Slice, but, you know, sounds like a really kind guy. But he was always able to learn quickly, too, when he was in the ring. I think about it, and I remember watching this video when he was learning about stuff with Michael Jai White. Big shout out to him. I love the movie Blood and Bone, first of all. But, yeah, no. You know, you learn videos with him, you know, and he's teaching him, you know, how to throw a punch quicker. And Kimbo was just so receptive to it. And, you know, he was always able to learn, you know, throughout his fight career, you know, throughout that video just in itself. And, you know, and especially when I look at what you say, it just looks like he was, you know, a nice guy, willing to, you know, be given knowledge, willing to, you know, take some of the knowledge that he's been given and give it to others. You know, I'm just putting all of it together now, you know?
Yeah, he was a tremendous man in his walk, no doubt. You know, there's several tremendous warriors in the UFC and Bellator and several other promotions in this sport. But, you know, there's few that really leave everlasting memories. You know, I happen to be friends with one of the best cut men in the world, Jacob Stitch Duran, and as we all know, he's done the Rocky movies, he's done the Creed movies. Uh, he just finished up Creed 2. It came out last November. Uh, a tremendous man in his own right. And you look at Burt Watson, the babysitter of the stars. These are relationships that, will last with me forever. The sport has ingrained such a tremendous brotherhood with me in certain aspects, that are the inner workings, that it just makes it tremendous. And that's one thing I want the fans to realize. Without the inner workings, fight night wouldn't happen. And that's how I do my show on the syndicated side, is I bring from amateurs to the inner workings to the world champions to the legends on, because I believe everybody that puts forth the effort has a voice and should be heard.
I agree with that 100%. Although I do want to change topics for just a second. How good does that heavyweight division look in boxing right now? You got Andy Ruiz Jr., you got Deontay Wilder, you got Tyson Fury. You got all these guys, Anthony Joshua even still, but you got all these different heavyweights in boxing, that are contenders, that, you got all these dream matchups, everything's exciting. And it's something you don't get as much from the heavyweight division as you do from others. So, I do want to ask you, how good does that look right now to you?
Oh, right now it's looking tremendous. Right now, this is what the sport has truly been waiting for. The sport actually was in the heavyweight. The heavyweight division is what creates and makes boxing. A lot of people will, probably disagree with me. I was in a conversation on the live earlier with Brad Berkowitz, who is a tremendous boxologist and a man of great knowledge, and we were actually talking about this. What this has done for the heavyweight division and for the sport of boxing is tremendous. Now, you look at Joshua. He read three chapters of a story, but he didn't read the final chapter. And we all know what happened. He lost to Andy Ruiz. Okay, there was a rematch clause in the contract. And Joshua could have took the fight to England. He could have fought in the UK, in front of 20, 30, 40,000 people. He didn't want that. He wanted to come back to Madison Square Garden for his rematch with Andy Ruiz. Now, I got in a debate with Stitch. Stitch seems to think that Joshua is going to have Ruiz's number in the rematch. I seem to think Ruiz is going to win. Do I think he could beat Deontay Wilder?
I don't know about that.
Here's what I think about Wilder. I think he's got tremendous punching power. Do I think he's a tremendous boxer? No. I think he's a man with great power. He does have some tremendous skills, but I think that matchup is anybody's fight. Now, let's say Andy Ruiz does beat Joshua. The only one in the heavyweight division right now that I think can beat Ruiz, if he does beat Joshua a second time, would be Tyson Fury.
Yeah, I might have to agree with that, because it's like you said, Deontay Wilder is a guy with tremendous punching power, and I was watching a couple videos on it. When you look at Ruiz, you look at a guy who's been boxing since, he was a kid. He has that muscle memory. Ruiz is a real boxer. So not to say that, Deontay and Joshua aren't real boxers, but, Ruiz has had this all his life, and, he's ingrained, the moves that he does into his memory, whereas Joshua and Wilder, they picked it up. So, when you look at Ruiz, I know he's not the person that you would picture as a world champion, but Ruiz has the skills of a boxer to be a world champion, and I think that's what separates him from Joshua and Wilder and maybe even Tyson Fury a little bit. I don't really know much about Tyson Fury's background, so I can't really say for 100%. But, yeah, honestly, I would have to agree with you. I think, Ruiz is going to take the fight with Joshua. I wasn't so sure the first time they got in the ring, but I think Ruiz is going to take the second fight.
Oh yeah, I called it because people didn't look at Ruiz's amateur record. I think it's like 132-1, and then you go look at his professional record. He's been around a long time. You look at the comments by Stephen A. Smith from ESPN.
Yeah.
I think it was some of the most derogatory comments ever made in the sport of boxing, and he was put in his place by Andy Ruiz. Now, here's another aspect that you got to add to this. With all the controversy that came to him after the fight, all the excuses that Joshua put out there after the fight. Okay, you got to remember, this is a man that took a fight on a 5-day notice, went in there and beat an undefeated world champion. Okay, he wanted that more than anything in the world. Okay, what could he want more? Okay, he gets the belt. If you sit back and you're a fan of the sport, you don't think that he's going to be even more determined now to prove himself going into this rematch because he doesn't want the world to call him a fluke, then you're out of your mind because Ruiz is going to work harder. He's going to come harder. And if anything, it's going to be a tremendous tribute to the sport of boxing because even if Joshua does win, it's going to be a hell of a mega fight.
Yeah. Ruiz, to me, seems like he has the mindset of a champion, too, because, you see him on all these different networks now. I was watching, a conversation between him and Jimmy Kimmel. He just seems like he has the mindset of, like, an actual champion, He seems like he, has that mindset that he's always wanted to work hard, and now that, and he is the first Mexican heavyweight champion, so, just knowing everything like that and, everything, that I've heard him say so far, it just seems like to me that he wants to work harder. That's the vibe I get, exactly what you said.
Now surmise this, if Joshua just would relinquish his rights to where the fight would be and we could have the super fight in Los Angeles or in Mexico City like Ruiz wants, what a night it'd be for the sport of boxing.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially since I don't think anybody was really expecting, the fight that they got between Joshua and Ruiz. And that was a fight. Because remember, Ruiz was the guy that got knocked down first, and then he came back, to knock Joshua down, what was it, like 3-4 times? Before, Joshua didn't even look like he wanted to fight anymore. It's not even like Joshua had a faraway look in his eye. He just did look like he wanted it more that night.
No, he didn't want any more of it. And, I watched an interview with his coach, and, certain aspects were perplexed that he had a concussion and, he was concussive. And, so his coach said that he's glad that they stopped the fight. His trainers were glad that they stopped the fight. One thing in the sport I don't like to see is injury. You go back to Paul Vaden, he had got, I forgot the opponent's name, I might have to look, but in his second to his last fight, he went in the round and he knocked the gentleman out. Can't remember his name right now, and I apologize to the listeners, but the gentleman never woke up. So when I interviewed Paul Vaden, I said, would you say it's a fair assumption that 2 careers died in the ring that night? And so when you look at that statement comparative to where Joshua may have been, it is a tremendous thing that his trainers and his coaches wanted to stop the fight because the sport isn't about, injuring or killing somebody. It's about pure entertainment, allowing the fans to have a tremendous night and the athletes to show true sportsmanship. But you don't want anybody truly injured in any regard or aspect.
Yeah. I do have to ask, though, some of the things that Deontay Wilder especially says, how he still try to get a body on his record, how he says it's not a gentleman's sport. Do you think that is something healthy to have in the sport of boxing? Because, when you go in the ring, you're coming at each other hard. You're punching each other. UFC, you're kicking each other. You're taking each other down. UFC, they don't stop because of blood. Do you think that is a healthy way to look at it? I personally think anybody going in the ring, should try to look at it that way because the other guy is coming at you, so you have to do the same. But do you think that is a healthy way to look at it if you're a fighter of any kind?
Well, here, excuse me. Here, I'm gonna break it down, and a lot of people don't realize this. Whether it's healthy or not for the sport, I'm not inclined to say so. But what most people don't realize, when you sign a bout agreement, whether it be in the UFC, whether it be in boxing, whether it be in any sport, you are basically signing a right to die in that promotion.
Yeah.
You are basically saying you are willing to die in that cage. You are willing to die in that ring. And so you have to go in there come fight night with that type of mentality. Yeah. You have to go in there knowing that you may go in, but you may die. You may never come out of that cage or that ring.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, and these fighters are doing this. See, this is what makes me mad, is I used to manage fighters. And, some aspects of the sport truly have perplexed me to a part where I don't manage fighters anymore, because I wouldn't take less than, $3,000 on the MMA side for my fighters. Now a lot of promotions, because there's so many of them popping up, what they're offering the fighters now is $500 and $500, $750 and $750. I wouldn't expect no man to risk his life for $750.
No.
It's not how I roll.
Yeah, no, I get you on that. I definitely wouldn't risk my life for $750. Gonna need a lot more than that.
Yeah.
But I definitely.
Thank God the sport hasn't had, too many instances where a fighter has lost their life. We just came out of a scare with Zab Judah, even though he's in retirement out of his career. Yeah. People need to realize that things do perplex later on in these fighters' lives from what they did early in the sport.
Yeah. Look at Muhammad Ali especially. I'm pretty sure, I'm pretty sure he would have lived a few years longer, maybe if he hung it up a little bit earlier, maybe if he wasn't fighting Joe Frazier out of his prime. Because first of all, you're not beating Muhammad Ali in his prime. No way. I don't see that happening.
No, I don't either. And you know what? You brought up a heartfelt moment for me, and that's kind of cool. Back in, I think it was 1997, or it was between 95 and 97, I got an opportunity to meet Muhammad Ali. And he did the rope-a-dope on me, and then he put his hand on the side of my head. And that man's hands were enormous. It went from my chin to the back of my head. And then he handed me a book of the Muslims signed by him. And as he walked away, I just stood there, and I was just like, that's Muhammad Ali. It kind of just, because those type of people have a persona that just emulates who they are, because he was a tremendous man. When I moved to Missouri, I had the opportunity of meeting Leon Spinks, a gentleman who had fought him. And I had him sign the other side of the book of the Muslims that Muhammad Ali gave me. Now, that's one piece of my life that I will never let go and will always be near and dear to me. Yeah. Like I said in the beginning of the interview, and I'll say to this point, a lot of people that are fans of the sport, I get it. You love it for what it is. People like me that have given, almost half of my life to it, those moments like that are truly what keep me involved and keep me going in this sport.
Yeah. And I can only imagine what it'd be like to meet Muhammad Ali. But I did hear one story that, was really cool to hear about Muhammad Ali, and, just let me kind of know the kind of person he is, the kind of guy that, is humble yet outspoken. And it was actually, a story on a plane. I heard it at my girlfriend's graduation speech, and it was the only part that I wasn't damn near falling asleep. But they were telling this story about Muhammad Ali, about how he was on a plane, everybody was cracking up, but the only thing is he was standing up on the plane, and it was time to go. The flight attendant told him that he needed to sit down. The plane was, ready to fly away. And Muhammad Ali says, "I'm Muhammad Ali. I float like a butterfly, sting like a bee, and Superman don't need no seatbelt." He goes up to the old lady sitting next to him. He says, "Ain't that right?" And she started saying to him, "Honey, you float like a butterfly and sting like a bee, but you're not Superman. Superman don't need no plane." And Muhammad Ali took a step back. And, it was, like I said, it, gave me a picture of Muhammad Ali about how he was, so humble, but, yet he wasn't afraid to be outspoken. He wasn't afraid to be the center of attention. And, it gave me, a sense of, like, I guess the champion, like, persona Muhammad Ali had. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, see, one thing I love that you put it that way, because a lot of people, really didn't get it, from the era that he was in, and yeah, he still left a lot of reflection of who he was on people like you and people in our era. But the thing of it is when you look at Muhammad Ali, you kind of got to put him in the same realm as Martin Luther King, Rosa Parks.
I agree.
He was a person that was outspoken, a person that stood up for what he believed in, a person that was giving and caring about others. And it wasn't just about one race or one person. It was about, people coming together as a community, people coming together as a whole when Muhammad Ali spoke. And I think that's what he did for the sport of boxing. I think he truly brought an aspect of boxing that we'll never see again.
Yeah, definitely. Especially when you look back at Vietnam and he changed his name. The guy, regardless of, what you think, whether you think, he's an American hero or that ruined his reputation, Muhammad Ali stood up for what he believed in, in that time period. He went against a system that, most people wouldn't go against today. Back then, you didn't see something like that. So, regardless of what you have to say about Muhammad Ali in that situation, Muhammad Ali was a guy who stood up for what he believed in.
Oh, most definitely. I love the sport. I'll tell you what, it's truly developed me and created me into the person I am today. And I'm just truly blessed, that I got an opportunity to be a part of this world.
Yeah, definitely. But I do have to say, the only thing I don't like about Muhammad Ali is a lot of people forget about Sonny Liston after, the fights he had with Muhammad Ali. Because Sonny Liston was the guy before Muhammad Ali took his championship. And, you think of everything, Sonny Liston did, and it's just a shame that people, forget about a guy like that today. You know what I mean?
Oh, most definitely. I'm glad you kind of brought that point up, man. I love talking with you because I did a show with a guy named Joey Giambra Sr., known as the Uncrowned Champion. He fought from 1949 to 1963. He was one of the greatest in the sport at that time, but he would never become a world champion. The reason he would never become a world champion was because the mob pretty much ran boxing back then, and they wanted him to take a dive on a fight, which he refused to do. So therefore, he never got an opportunity to fight for a title. And the ironic part of his career is one night after a fight, he was taking pictures with everybody, and Marilyn Monroe had come up. He told the story on my show. Marilyn Monroe came up, and she was kind of smitten on him. And she was grabbing him pretty close and kind of rubbing on him a little bit. Well, Joe DiMaggio was sitting in the front row, and he didn't take too kindly to that. So, there was a little bit of verbal, remarks back and forth, and the story, grew from there. But the point being that you look at the humble beginnings of boxing and the stories that can be told. That's why I do my Legends in Boxing show. That's why I bring on boxers from the early era of the sport, aspects of the Olympics, to amateurs, to whatever, from the heyday, because, that truly is what created all aspects of combat sports leading forward. And if it wasn't for those type of days and that aspect of the sport, people like me wouldn't even exist.
Yeah, it's like you said, it came from humble beginnings, and, it is what it is today. And honestly, without boxing, I think, the UFC may not even exist today. That's just my personal opinion. I feel like, boxing kind of gave it, the start UFC needed. I feel like it kind of branched off from the UFC. I don't know too much on that, so I could honestly be wrong, but that's, what I get from it.
Oh, I agree with you wholeheartedly. I think if it wasn't for boxing, combat sports wouldn't even be nowhere near what it is today.
Yeah, definitely. But I do have to say we are just about out of time. I do want to give a shout out to Anakian Music, Michael Katz, for all the songs they allow me to play on air. So thank you for that. I really appreciate it. Shout out to the Jerry Petito Show for also sponsoring this show and helping me to have this platform. Thank you. I appreciate you so much. And shout out to my girlfriend who's doing a borderline Macarena right at the side of this camera, and the 5 people that decided to walk through. But you know what? I really appreciate talking with you, man. You're a great guy to talk to. I didn't want to, say too much before the show. And, it was very easy to get wrapped up in a 20-minute conversation with you the first time we talked last week when we kind of screwed up the time differential. I do have to ask you one more question. There is a female rapper that I know from Missouri. Her name is Lynn Madam. I had her on the show a few months ago. Do you by any chance know who that is?
You know what? Honestly, you caught me off guard there. I actually don't.
No?
I'd be honored for you to share some of her music with me.
Wow, I definitely got to send that to you one day. But she is from Missouri too. She's from Kansas City, so I didn't know if you knew her or not.
No, I deal with everybody from Cash Money to Death Row, but you know what? I've been dealing with DJ Supra and pulling artists from their show because that's where some of the greatest artists are coming from right now. But I do want to give one shout out before I leave and say goodbye to everybody, and that's to Meta Noise. Tremendous, brother group. Twins, if you didn't know, but one of their favorite songs of mine is 40-40-40. And still to this day, I don't think anybody can accomplish that feat that they did in that song.
Definitely. And I got to give a shout out to Julian Extra and Ben Gorski, also part of Anakian, before we go. Once again, man, thank you so much for coming on. I would love to have you back on at some point. Hopefully Lunatics and some other guys as well. Thank you again, man. Appreciate it.
Oh, no worries, brother. Thank you for having me on. Much love to your listeners. Have a blessed night and stay good, man.
You too,
Appreciate
man.
you having me on.
Of course. This is HamiltonRadio.net, channel HR2, The Roundtable. Funny Talk coming up next with Evan Weiss. Don't miss it. Peace.
You've got to be quick. You're not keeping up with me. You've got to be sick. I'm talking of a wild man in the Coming clan. It's like color of death on a church or a bed. You've got to be frightening. You make them fall to the knees while inciting dancing with ghosts. Oh, naive, it's ignorant, it's callow. A presence elusive. Oh, goodbyes, welcome intrusions. Dancing with ghosts. Oh, naive, it's ignorant, it's callow, it's shallow. Look into your life for you're sad. You're not gonna be happy unless you're mad. I'm trying to help you understand. The war you want will never end. Yes, this world thinks your life is despicable. I couldn't understand why they're unable to narrow down this table in which your problems evolve. They continue revolving, filling voids with a fight, afraid of what is right. You're dancing with ghosts. Oh, naive, it's ignorant, it's callow. A presence elusive. Oh, goodbyes, welcome intrusions. Dancing with ghosts. Oh, naive, it's ignorant, it's callow, it's shallow. A presence elusive. Oh, goodbyes, welcome intrusions. Dancing with ghosts. Oh, naive, it's ignorant, it's callow. A presence elusive.